a lot of times when people think about Chinese or Asian Americans, they tend to think about California or New York or Chicago. They don't pay enough attention to Boston or New England. But actually, Boston is one of the earliest Chinatowns in the country, and it still has one of the largest Chinese American communities in the country. New England has had a long relationship with Asia, beginning with the old China trade after the American Revolution, and after the California gold rush in the 1840s, and some Chinese did come to New England after the 1860s, especially after the railroad was built, the Transcontinental Railroad was established. So they built up this Chinatown beginning from the 1870s. But most Chinese, they would live in Chinatown, but they would also work all over New England. They opened up restaurants or laundries and a lot of other business. However, they were being excluded. They were not able to become American citizens if they were not born in the U.S. Or even if they brought their children here, they could not become American citizens, and they could not naturalize because of the Exclusion Act in 1882. So this book really covers this group of Chinese Americans who were the pioneers of Asians in New England. And some of them were the earliest students who came to colleges in New England. The first student who went to Yale studied in the 1850s. And then there were also other students in high schools and universities across the country. But most of the book have to do with workers and merchant and the working class in general. And it is this group of working class Chinese Americans who built up the Asian community. And also in this book I also cover not just men but also women and families. Sometimes when people think about the Chinese, they only look at the bachelors, the so-called bachelor society, because the ratio was very high between men and women. But I did find that there were a lot of women who started to become very active after the 1920s, and they built their own communities and joined schools, social organizations such as the Boy Scout and Girl Scout and YMCA and other community organizations. The old Chinatown has a lot of institutions like Chinese language schools, a printing company, all kinds of family associations, and of course the restaurants and the laundries. So in this book you see a lot of those pictures and the stories of these individual families. And finally, I also look at World War II and the impact of World War II on the Chinese Americans. Not only did they become more accepted in American society, they also became more active. And they organized a lot of demonstrations against Japan in World War II, and they supported China and the United States in the war against Japan. And after World War II, because of the redevelopment of Boston, they built new highways like the Central Artery. So some Chinese were driven out of the community. But most Chinese still stay in Chinatown, and they built new housing. And then after 1960s, more immigrants came. And then now the Asian community is firmly established here. But without the earlier generation from the 1870s to the 1960s, the Asian American community would not be like that today. So I hope that this book would give people insights about the early history of Chinese Americans, both in Boston and in New England.